Hello, Javi and Louie. How you guys doing? Let me do a sound check first. Is the sound okay? And can you see it in the video? Everything working all right? Okay. Got a bunch of stuff today. Hey, Big Sal. How you doing? Um, hi, Hoas. Is that how you pronounce it? Hoas, correct? Louis, everything's okay. Thanks, Louis. Okie doke. Let me get started on something that is hi Raj, that Owen, how are you? That I wanted to sort of talk about because I've seen it by too many people. I know you're trying to have a discussion somewhere about watches in a lot of different uh, settings. Okay, and somebody puts up a picture of a watch and somebody hollers, oh, that's a ripoff or homage or a copy of such and such and such and such. And hey, Dominic and Andrew, and okay, good. Oh, Joas says with a J is okay. Okay, Joas. Um, so this is sort of some background on it. This is a Roger Dubuis, and it's called. Hang on a second here. It's called Homage Counterfeits. All right. Well, I thought, well, whatever a counterfeit is, it sort of uses that style or that design. Well, it turns out that the condottieri was an Italian sort of military group from I don't know when back. It was not any time in the 20th or 21st century, but a long time ago. Okay, so um, so this is a watch with that, and looking at the dial, um, I had been looking at the simplicity dial, and when you compare them, the dials are pretty close. They're not exactly identical. The simplicity. This is a Dufour. Simplicity uses brigade hands. The Roger Dubuis uses what are called leaf hands. There's a French term for it, fluel or something like that. And so, it, looking at one or the other, someone's going to say, "Oh, hey, Dufour ripped off um, Roger Dubuis." Well, it's that didn't happen. There's it's a, the thing I wanted to talk about is sort of the whole notion of general styles and fonts and so forth, and they usually come with a some kind of history to them, more in the development of fonts and where not from a watch bench. I mean, it's true that some fonts have been developed pretty much on the watch bench. One of the most common fonts and dials that you'll probably see, I don't know if you can see this or not. Let me see, try to do that. Um, Probably looks backwards too. But this is essentially a brigade font. And brigade fonts are I see them used everywhere. This is my Urban Jurgensen. It's got the same font essentially, and it's nobody's ripping off anybody in this sense. You take for example the what is called the Bauhaus movement, and if you take a look at Nomos, you will see the Bauhaus movement all over the place. Bauhaus everywhere on their designs. Now, if another watch uses Bauhaus, some people say, "Well, that's what they're ripping off Nomos." No, they're not. They're not ripping off anybody. And the thing I suppose that bothers me a little about that is usually the people who are the least informed and they know a little stuff. There's sort of, where a little knowledge is dangerous. To find out about fonts, the most fun place to go is poster art. If you look at the posters, some of the most interesting posters are the German posters from the 1920s, where you have this sort of a style of, I guess, it's sort of a German art deco. It really is fascinating stuff. Also with French poster art, yeah, there's all kinds of things where you can find these fonts. These fonts uh, didn't come out of nowhere. Now, the other thing about this, and looking at these two, um, is that you have with the Roman numerals, is that they go around and they keep their same orientation. And so when you get down here, they're upside down. All right. And on both of these, they're the same. And I don't know where that, I found some dials with that style on old pocket watches, including key wound pocket watches. So it's like I said, it's not a matter of somebody ripping off somebody else. Here's another one that I was looking at. This is it's often referred to for some reason as a heritage style. And one of the most recent ones I've seen has been on H. Moser's, and they look great. But here is one of the from the 1921. This is the boutique version of the Vacheron Constantin Historiques Americain 1921. And the original version had this kind of font and the spade and syringe hands on it. And then here it is on a Patek Philippe Pilot that came out about, I don't know, 9, 10 years ago, something like that. And it uses the same style. They didn't, this did not rip off this. They both employed a style from some period, and these styles come and they go and then come back again and so forth. And so when somebody starts snorting homage or rip off or something like that, it's sort of like, well, come on, you guys. I mean, there goes the discussion. There goes any really serious discussion of a watch, rather than you have it sort of like the children's table making a comment about what they know, and it's not very much. And so, anyway, it was sort of a thing that had bothered me, not because it's stupid, which it is, but rather because it sort of detracts from what I think is important things to talk about to understand watches. If you look at the back of this watch, this is a Roger Dubuis, and you look at the back of the Simplicity, you'll see almost immediately they're very different watches. And so the important thing was not the style of the dial, but rather uh, what is going on with the watch. Okay, there's those are some of the things I want to say. Let me see what else. Let's see. Hi Thomas, Cappy Luxury, good to see you. Philip, um, Jean Claude Beaver, always glad to see you here. Hey Neff, you got Fritz Lang. I tell you something about Fritz Lang. His one of his most famous um, films that he did was called Metropolitan. This is back, I think it was in the 1920s, and he had a very specific font for this crazy clocks that he had in the film, and they were only numbered from 1 to 10 for some reason. But I had to look all over. I finally found that font, and I was thinking, well, that'd be sort of a cool font to put on a watch someday, and maybe I will. But I mean, they come from. So if anybody saw that and they said, "Hey, you ripped off Metropolitan by Fritz Lang," yeah, that would be accurate. But that's the kind of thing I think that's more interesting, and it's just it's just the font that's used. Hi, Indrajit. How are you, Philip? Let's see. Hey, Abdul. Um, hey, Tim. Let's see. Okie doke. I got to welcome everybody here. Okie doke. Um, hey, the renter, Metropolis. Right. Yeah, I probably said the wrong thing. Roman numerals have been around since thousands of years. Same with the Arabic numbers. It's not a ripoff. Right, exactly, Philip. Exactly. Um, you know, some watches have it's a I guess Eastern Arabic or some other version of Arabic numbers on the watches, and yeah, you're right. They've been around 1,000 years, especially Roman numerals. Okie doke. Hey Lee, good morning. Got released from the land of the granddaughters. Well, it's only a temporary reprieve. Um, oh, hey Gilberto, how you doing? I feel like there are homages that feels more like ripoffs, while others feel like tribute to the original. Well, Abdul, what I'm saying is that they may be neither. They're simply like I like that sort of that. Oh, well, I like to take Bauhaus for example. Somebody who's a big Bauhaus fan could care less about Nomos and didn't even look at Nomos, but sort of sets up a number of them with a Bauhaus number. And I think if you're going to trace something to another watch, now I know that Rolex owners think that everything with a bezel that rotates is a ripoff from Rolex. I don't know whether that's true or not, but it doesn't really add to a great deal of discussion. I mean, hey, it's a ripoff, and there goes the discussion. And instead of doing that, I think is that say, hey, that's a Bauhaus that was a certain school of Bauhaus that was, let's say, popular in Hamburg, for example, or that was a French style of Art Deco that was different from the Czech work of Alphonse Mucha. Where you have things like that, and so when you see different ones, like for example, this is not a ripoff of this, and this, if it's a ripoff of anything, it's a ripoff of itself because this is I don't know, 2000 something, and the original came out in 1921, and this entire style was often associated with pilot watches, early pilot watches, with those with the giant crowns on it, so they could, they're all wrapped up in gloves and their scarves and so forth. And they could wind the thing. Um, yeah, Abdul, I think I know what you're saying when you have something that when you take the entire watch's style, but if you look at these two watches, neither one of them is a ripoff of the other. And the only thing that's different about it is they use different hands. But that's so even though they're virtually identical otherwise, they're and then you go back and you find Louis the 14th had a pocket watch like that or a clock or something like that. I think a lot of the styles on watches are from clocks. Long Jeans came out with something similar. Yeah, yeah, exactly, Jean Jean Claude. Hey, John, how you doing? Um, there are definitely a copy of pace culture, which in watch industry, pace culture, taste. You mean? Most of them will be a copy past that works. Philip M. I would say Hublot rips off designs, but they target those who love face beauty over horology. That said, having a watch is better than none, as it shows you enjoy it. Yeah, there's I was thinking of a watch with a style similar to these guys right here. And there's another one. I mean, when you look at the heritage watches that H. Moser came out with not too long ago, you find that style. And I think what we're really looking at is a school of design, or a time of design. Now, having a totally original dial on a watch, you can have that. I mean, but you don't see them that much. You find ones, and I think somebody mentioned this. There's a certain popular style that people like, and they're more likely to put that on the watch because it's favored. This is why I see um, this kind of brigade numbers all over the place, and they have a style that people like. And it's not so much, I think, somebody's trying to rip off somebody else as it is somebody is trying to sell watches. Okay, Thomas, let's see. What do you guys have got going here? Uh, Bauhaus, uh, in the middle. I don't know. Okie doke. Okay, the rancher, I agree. A good example to apply that to would be the slight differences and similarities between the Dirty Dozen watches, different brands making a similar type of watch. Yeah, I mean, well, you take the Flieger, for example. You take the Flieger design, which I think was, from the watches that the Luftwaffe used in World War II. The Allies, the British and Americans and so forth also had fairly distinct pilot watches as well. The dial design sets the scene for the watch experience. That's very true, Owen. And I think it does set it, but to quibble about that's the most important thing that people see that and they say, oh well, that must be what it is. It's you take posters. Go and Google up poster art from Germany in the 1920s, and you'll see a lot of posters with similar fonts and similar styles and so forth. Um, and our American art during World War II, the poster art they had and the kinds of fonts they used were very different from the ones that were used in World War One. And other different epics are the during the sort of the hippie acid in the mid '60s, that kind of art, which is sort of a combination of Art Nouveau and an acid trip, I guess. But you have a lot of these emerging, and then they change, and then they come back again, and so forth. But rather, I think if you're going to sort of, holler homage, I think it would be better to say, hey, that is a style that you can see from this sort of design school, for example. There's a style and there's a homage. Like an Invicta is a homage, but say a sector dial is a style. Homage to me is more of a near perfect copy of the look only. Um, well, this these guys, they're not copying one another. I don't think Simplicity said, "Oh, gee, uh, which was Simplicity?" I couldn't tell. This is the Roger Dubuis, all right? And I think Roger Dubuis said, "Oh, I think I want to use uh, Roman numerals," and took a look at some Roman numeral designs. And I think that Philippe Dufour did the same thing. I don't think he went and said, "No, let me see what Roger is up to, and I'll copy his dial." And I think the danger in saying, "Oh, they look just the same," could be that they come from, let's say, the same key wound pocket watch. but I think rather than before announcing homage, which is usually by people who aren't too bright, they really don't know horology that well, but they have one watch that they spend a lot of time with, and they see another one like it, and they say, "Aha, this is a ripoff." Rather than saying, "Look at these two watches like this, and I wonder what the origin is," because it's not neither one of them are ripping off the other. And if you the closer you look at the fonts, they're almost identical. The dials are almost identical. The only difference is the hands and the size of the subdial. And so I think it gives you a much better understanding of a lot of different things. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have someone that says, "Oh, we're going to make this just look exactly like this other guy's watch. All right, we're going to make it look like a Rolex, and so people can buy our watches for $1,000, and they think they're getting a $10,000 watch." I'm sure that happens. In fact, I know it does. But because two things are alike, is not a matter of copying one another, but rather adopting a a school of art, a school of design. And I think that we ought to be more sophisticated than squawking homage or copy or ripoff like some, I don't know why. It just seems like, sort of a troll's toolbox because they don't know anything else. And I think that for us to do the same thing is sort of, I don't know, cheapens our own intellect about watch design. Okay, enough from me. Let's see what you guys say. I don't have a problem with the word homage. I have a problem with the general misrepresentation of the word. Oh boy, Andrew. Okay, I got to tell you now. I looked it up ahead of time. All right, and also notice that Roger Dubuis spells it in a different way. He spells it with two M's, uh, and that's sort of in honor of the condottieri. And the other ones are like, if I did a watch with a that had a dial that looked like the Simplicity, for example, I could do a Simplicity homage, but I could call the same one. It's really a homage of the Roger Dubuis homage. Better to really find out about this stuff. Okay, let's see what's going on. The devil's in the detail. The small details make the watch. That I agree with, Abdul. Okay, let's see what Jean Claude has. Favorite watch with brigade numerals is actually a Patek. Yeah, my favorite watch with the brigade numbers is my Vacheron Content 10, 1921. But the other 1921, if you're talking about homages and so forth, this is what was one of the styles of the original one, was this one right here. So you have these things, and I think that as watch collectors, I think we're better served if we want to talk about the style of a watch is to first find out what the origin of that certain style is. And like I said, sort of started tracing back uh, this one, and I found it in very old pocket watches, and including I found this style of all places in a 1903 Patek Philippe. You see, these are not looking for someone ripping off someone else. I think it's better to say, "Oh, here you got a designer, and he's going through his font kit or something like that, and saying, I want to get a font that works with that." Okay, Roger B is also based on displays of classic mechanical clocks. Yes, John, that's a good point. Yeah. See this, they're going to places like that to find out about it. I really like the dial on the Alanga 1815 chronograph, new generation. Okay. Um, yes, homage doesn't equal ripoff. Yes, you're right, Andrew. Okay, it's going to be later. JCB, I'm broke. I have to sell another watch. That's a story of a lot of us, Thomas. Zohas, I think ripoff emerges since now there are so many modern watch designs that choosing the same style will be categorized into one. But even then, I would not be bothered by it. Yeah, Joas, I think you're absolutely right about that. Um, I think what I think for our own sense that it's sort of a cheap shot to say, oh, that's a ripoff or that's an homage, when it's like just at a glance at it, and then you look inside the watch and they're like very, very different. I was looking at the which one was it? It was at the Langenheim Frederick III, which has the Roman numerals, and they were very similar to this, except they were a lot skinnier. But they had the same kind of going to inverted around the bottom that this other design has. Buy what you love, done. Okay. What if you buy something you love and some creep comes up and says, it's a homage? You don't want that. Okay. Is the Bell and Ross an homage of plain clocks? Oh, yeah. Yes, I love those. Those are, yeah, they use um, the instrument dials. The other one too is the Rolex Air King that I happen to like a lot, which is a copy of the Bloodhound um, ground racer, whose instrument panel was designed by Rolex, and so here you have Rolex copying Rolex. And to me, one of the most interesting dials of any of the Rolex watches. Andrew, by the way, I'm agreeing with, okay, I'm saying people think homage had negative connotations. Yeah, Andrew, that's a good point. Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily have a negative connotation. This one is called Roger Dubuis Homage Condottieri, and it's sort of in honor of. There's a longa that's a homage to Walter Lang. So yeah, no, you're right about that, Andrew. I think where it is somebody who they're really not a great thinker, and so they want to look sophisticated, and they'll say, "Oh, that's a homage," and yeah, so it's like, oh boy, and we don't learn anything from that. We don't have any insight. Um, if somebody comes up and he says to me that watch has a X, Y, or Z design, I will say a Bauhaus design, and it's got a movement that is was sort of a was by so and so, that was based on a Valjoux, this kind of thing. I have a Beauvais that has I think it's a Valjoux 84 in it with a monorattrapone. And now that tells you something very specific about the watch. To whine homage tells you almost nothing, or ripoff, or similar kind of thing. And it's sort of like somebody who lays an egg and then runs away, because usually that sort of kills the discussion. Either that or people get into a big fight about it, which is equally stupid. I think what is more important is for people to do a deep dive, if they're interested in design, and find out where that design originated, whether it's with Abraham Breguet on the bridge over the Seine in Paris, or whether it's some guy who day before yesterday came up with a design. I like some homages better than original. Yeah. Like real copies of many watches are harder and harder to discern from the real McCoy. Well, that's a different thing now, John. You're right. I mean, you take if the goal of a watchmaker is to if the goal of a watchmaker is to basically make a counterfeit watch. I know this is a big concern among Rolex owners, that they're calling them super counterfeits or something like that. You can't tell the difference. And that's true with counterfeit anything. Uh, the art world is full of counterfeits, just full of them. And there's some cooperation with the counterfeiters and the art dealers. Okay. Yeah, but don't we also dump a little bit on brands that do reissues of older icons? Yeah, we probably do on those things. Okay, well, that's my 2 cents, guys. I was told that it's time. My time is up. I gotta go. But it's just something like I said, something I've been thinking about. And I want to thank Rancher for for actually saying, "Why don't you talk about that?" I thought it was a good idea too. Okay, Javi and Joas, thanks again for coming. Take care. Have a good day, and be safe.